Hi everyone, John here from LookSmart Home Inspections in New Jersey. I had a client the other day and she asked me what would be the issues that I would find in home that would make me want to not purchase a house. So sort of those, non-negotiable issues that I would see that would say, no, this house is not for me. I'm going to move on to the next house. So, that's a question that I didn't really want to just answer very quickly because it's an important one. She really wanted to know because she was looking for a house. So the first thing that comes to mind for me would be a horizontal mid-wall foundation wall crack with movement or shear. So when we look at houses as a home inspector, there's a lot of things we look at, obviously, with foundation walls. And one of them is wall movement, bowing inward, or mid-wall foundation wall cracks that are horizontal, which would indicate soil pressure pushing against that exterior foundation wall in a way that's causing damage that exceeds the design capacity of that wall. Interior of the wall, the foundation wall inside the house. That would be the first thing, because these cracks are actually difficult to fix. And if you do fix them and you go sell the home, you're likely to have some friction because you're always going to be on your defensive regarding, the fix. That buyer is likely to have to get an engineer in to determine if the fix is correct, even though you have documentation regarding, your contractor or your engineering firm. They're always going to want to bring in their documentation. And just to the mere fact that indicates a major structural concern generally, I'm just talking generalizations here. That would be the first thing that I would say, you know what, maybe this house is not for me, guys. I'm going to move on to the next house. Is that wide foundation, horizontal crack with that movement of the foundation wall. If it's a thin crack, horizontal crack, you can generally repair those cracks by using some systems like carbon fiber strapping or something like that. So those are not as severe. But what I'm talking about here is that half-inch crack going across the foundation wall with the movement of the foundation wall. Yeah, man, I would probably think twice. The next issue that I may not purchase a home if I was looking for a house currently is significant water infiltration in the basement or crawl space. So if you're looking for a house and you go in there and you smell mustiness and you're looking around the interior perimeter of that basement or crawl space and you see a lot of stains and you see if it's a finished basement, you have that, sometimes you'll see that old paneling that's delaminated. Those are the things that really would be on my radar for maybe not going through with a house purchase. It's true that the majority of the basement water infiltration problems can be fixed with a French drain, a basement dewatering system, a proper sump pump, and backup. Sure, you can probably do all that. But the question is, do I want to do all that? Do I want to take on that burden now? The seller has lived in this house for a while. He or she has experienced a lot of basement water, right? Why haven't they done anything, They've just left it alone. Maybe their finances are not in a position where they can do it. But I have to think twice because I, for sure, don't want to be wrestling with a significant basement water problem because a lot of things negatively can happen. We know that there's pressure against the foundation wall, which can cause damage. And if the basement is finished, I'm not going to be able to see that. I'm not going to be able to see those important cracks that are, potentially there because of that hydraulic pressure pushing on that basement foundation wall. And that's a serious issue. Also, obviously, you can have a lot of mold, right? If you smell that mustiness in a basement, and it's just like a damp and dank basement, and you smell that mold odor, well, guess what? It's mold. That's what it is. Mold is outgassing, and you're likely to have a mold problem behind those interior basement finished walls. So Significant water infiltration in the basement would be another sort of red flag that I personally, as a home inspector, would probably want to dig deeper into that problem with the owner of the home, if they're available to even tell you what's going on. You know, I might think twice, honestly, if I go into a house that has a significant basement flooding problem, and because I just don't want to wrestle with trying to fix that. I'll move on to the next house, frankly. So that's number 2. Number 3 is that if I go up to a house and I'm looking at that house from the exterior and I'm eyeing up that house and I see those walls, the exterior walls, bowing outward at the top of the roof, where that roof is exerting its natural pressure against the outer walls of the home, and we have that big roof sag right in the middle of that ridge beam or ridge board, that's a major structural concern that's very difficult to fix. So when you're looking for a house, I want you to actually eye up the exterior of this home from the outside. Eye up those exterior walls, especially the opposite, on the opposite gable ends, and make sure that those walls are not being pushed outward by the weight and structure of the roof. Because if you see that and you have a ridge beam or the very top of the ridge that's got this big horseshoe kind of dip in it, we have a problem. It can be fixed, for sure. But again, the problem is, do I want to get involved with this? Now I'm going to have to bring contractors in. I'm going to have to get a professional engineer in this house to design me a fix. And it's going to be rather expensive, of course. And now I'm going to have to negotiate that with the seller of the home. So do yourself a favor when you're buying a house, and is to eye up those exterior walls. Eye up all 4. Just make sure those walls are not being pushed outward and the roof is not coming down with a big sag. And you'll do yourself a big favor and save yourself a lot of money in the future. So that's number 3. If I see that in a house that I'm thinking about buying, I'm probably going elsewhere. Number 4, if I'm looking at a house and I see a significant negative grade that's going to drive water to either the garage at the end of the driveway or the overall house, I may be thinking twice. Because if you have a house that sits lower than the street or is lower than the existing terrain around the home, you know that that water is going to be driven to the home. And let me tell you, after doing this 22 years, nothing good happens when you're driving water to the structure of a house. And I don't care what kind of dewatering system you have in the basement. So that's the 4th one. If I see a house that's sitting low and I have water, I'm sorry about the horn beeping, but I'm on the street today. If I have that water driving close to that house, I know that there's going to be a water problem or the high potential to have a water problem in the home. So again, I'm thinking twice and maybe moving on to the next house. Okay, number 5. I don't want to deal with an extensive mold problem in a house. I just don't want to deal with it. So if you have an extensive mold problem in a house that you're looking at and you see all this black, white, green material on the interior foundation or the interior wall finishes in the basement, that's a problem. And you obviously, that's indicative of a water seepage or water infiltration problem. Obviously, mold needs high moisture to grow. And a lot of times we'll see mold in attics too because of the problem in the basement. So moisture will end up going up through the floors into the attic space because there's something called a stack effect in a home. So all that moisture just rises up to the attic space. So that's number 5. I don't want to buy a house that has a significant mold problem. Now I'm talking about a significant mold problem. I'm not talking about a little bit of mold in the attic or basement. Sure, no problem, that can be fixed. I'm talking about extensive mold problem, because who wants to deal with that? There's all types of potential health hazards along the way with that as well. So you know what? House has a lot of mold. I'm going elsewhere. All right, number 6 has to do with 2 specific wiring problems that are sometimes found in homes. And the first one is having original knob and tube wiring throughout the house if you're looking for an older home. So knob and tube wiring was the oldest original residential form of wiring, and it doesn't have any grounds. And it's also difficult to dissipate heat if it's installed in insulation or it's touching other materials or laying on top of itself. This is a problem. Now, there's people out there that will. The other two items where I may not want to buy a house if I was looking at it had these two electrical defects, and both of these defects are very specific. One of them is original knob and tube wiring in the home, and knob and tube wiring was the original residential wiring in the home found, in the early 1900s. So that wiring is obviously very obsolete, and it's going to be brittle. It's going to have problems. A lot of times we find, bad circuitry. We find, illegal taps into that knob and tube wiring where people have spliced other, modern electrical into this old knob and tube. So if a house has knob and tube wiring and it's throughout the house and it's just not one or two circuits, but it's the whole home, and I have knob and tube running in the walls and I have knob and tube running in the ceilings, that's a problem, because that knob and tube wiring really needs to be replaced and removed from the home. In fact, some insurance companies won't even insure a house with this old knob and tube wiring. And there are people out there that are going to tell you, oh, this knob and tube wiring, this is okay. It's fine as long as it's untouched and it's, let me tell you something. You want it out of your house, okay? I mean, the last thing you want to do is to have a house fire because of some faulty, wiring that's obsolete and tired and brittle. So if a house has knob and tube wiring throughout the house, I'm not talking about just one or two circuits. I'm talking about a lot of knob and tube wiring. I'm probably going to think twice about buying that home. The other issue is aluminum wiring. So aluminum wiring is basically a problem that's sort of from 1968-ish to 1975-ish. And this aluminum wiring is an issue because as you run heat through the aluminum wiring, it tends to expand, and the heat dissipates, it contracts. And it's all with this expansion and contraction of this wiring. It can cause arcing in the walls and at what we call the junction points of the electrical wiring. So those are like light fixtures, those are electrical receptacles in the home. So if you have electrical that's jumping or arcing, that's a significant fire hazard. And again, there's a lot of insurance companies that won't even insure a house with this aluminum wiring unless it's fixed. Well, how do you fix it? Well, there's pigtailing, where you can pigtail copper wire to the aluminum using a special wire nut, which is like a purple wire nut. Or there's something called copalum connectors, which is basically a cold weld of that copper to that aluminum. I haven't been able to find anybody who does that, so I'm not sure. So most electricians are going to want to do that pigtailing with the purple wire nuts. And the problem with this is that each and every connection in the home has to be done. So you have to have an electrical contractor that's very organized and actually keeps track of each and every one, because if you miss one or two, those are the ones that could be the issue and cause the fire in your house. Plus, the insurance companies have big problems with aluminum wiring. So if you're buying a house with aluminum wiring, if I'm looking at a house with aluminum wiring throughout the home, early 1970s, you know what? I'm probably going to pass. I'm probably going to go look elsewhere. And if I'm looking at a house and I do an Oprah request and I request the permits, and the home has new bathrooms, a brand new bathroom that was installed in the upstairs, a new laundry room that has been installed, new finished basement, and you know what? There's no permits anywhere for this work. And people love to do their own work. They like to hire, the contractors come in, and they don't get the permits. So you want an open permit for the work and a closed permit for the work, right? So what the closed permit does is it tells us that the town, the municipality, came in with their own inspector and viewed that work and approved it, right? So if you're looking at a house and you have all these new things, all these modifications to the structure, walls have been taken out, different modifications Plumbing's been added, electrical's been added, an addition on the home. All of these things require permits, an open permit and a closed permit. So the closed permit is very important, and we want to make sure that we have that. So if I'm looking at a house and I go to the municipality and this is all public record and there's no permits for any of this work, I'm going somewhere else. I'm looking for another house, because I know that there's going to be problems because the inspections weren't performed before those interior finishes were made. And if walls were removed or if structure was modified, I know that an architect did not do that work, or a professional engineer did not design that structure. And I'm just asking for trouble if I purchase a home that doesn't have permits for major, I'm talking about major modifications to electrical, plumbing, or structure. Find another house. Another thing is a significant rodent infestation. I do not want to buy a house that's absolutely infested with rodents or other vermin. That is going to be a problem, right? So not only are mice dirty, they can give you all viruses such as hantavirus or other viruses. They chew electrical wiring. They get into stuff and cause damage with their urine and their gnawing that you wouldn't believe, right? So that's a problem. Like if I see a lot of mice droppings all over the interior perimeter of the garage, the basement, the attic, on the attic insulation, and I'm looking at that house, I may want to change. I may want to look elsewhere, because that cleanup's going to be expensive. And who knows what where those rodents have been and the damage they've caused to the electrical wiring in the walls of the home. So rodent infestation is a big deal. Now, I know most homes are going to have some mice. Yes, absolutely. What I'm talking about here is the big problem where you see piles and piles of rodent droppings in the corner of the garage or the basement, and they're just everywhere. There's evidence of rodent infestation in a home. You know what? As a home inspector, I'm probably moving on. Now, most everything can be fixed in a home that we find during a home inspection. But these are the things that I, as a home inspector with experience, you know, if I was buying a house, and I'm not in the market for a house right now, but these are the things that would kind of sway me into looking at a different house. Even if I really loved this first house with some of these problems in it, you know, maybe you have a couple of these problems in the home. And you know what? You won't even really be able to tell if you have these problems without first doing a home inspection. Although you may be able to tell the water infiltration in the basement or the mustiness or the mold, but the other issues, they're going to be less apparent to you as somebody who is touring a house. So it certainly pays to get a reputable, experienced home inspector to do your home inspection. So these are just some of the items where I, doing this for many, many years, would probably think twice. And if the conditions were correct, where I would, you know, possibly be able to negotiate some of these things, or to, you know, maybe get the seller to fix some of these things, it might be possible that I would even move forward with some of these issues. But in the whole grand scheme of things, these are some of the larger problems that we find in homes. And you may just want to move on to the next house. It may not be worth your time trying to decipher, try to fix these, you know, these problems in homes. So I hope that was helpful. I'm going to, you know, talk to my client about some of these issues I was giving some thought to last night about, you know, maybe I'll move on if I was looking for a house that had, you know, these these following problems. But anyway, we'll see you next time. This is John from LookSmart Home Inspections right here in New Jersey. Have a great day. See you next time.